2 buttons, and then it's over to you.
Let's give it a go. Hello, and welcome to another exciting Feeling Techish podcast. Recording live, we're on YouTube and Twitch, as I'm sure people know, if you're watching. Otherwise, welcome to listeners who are listening to the recording. This week, we're going to be talking about scams. Thank you for everyone who sent your Bitcoin. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a technical issue, and we're not able to send you double back anymore. Very sorry. Please don't complain.
There is an easy way, actually. We could resolve that. If they send us the Bitcoin again, it might fix that technical problem. Yeah, okay, good.
That would solve it. Yeah, just gotta get the Bitcoin elves working. Otherwise, it doesn't. We're not able to double it. Cool. As you may have seen, we have our usual Lee.
Yeah, I'm here.
And we're kind of missing someone else. Turns out the biggest scam of all is Lauren getting us to come and do this entire podcast without her. We didn't know.
Lauren was meant to be leading this week as well. I think she's probably one of the 4 viewers that's now laughing at us, having not turned up to any prep sessions as well, leaving us to our own devices.
Yeah, she's making lots of excuses, but I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was a bit strange when she asked us to pay up front. Yeah. It's like the deposit which she took off us.
Well, she gave us lessons on how to run a podcast. She said, if you follow my very simple steps on how to run a podcast, and you reach level 10, training session 10, then you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Okay, I think you get the idea. There's going to be a lot of jokes about various types of scams during this, particularly as it's just me and Lee, and we don't know how to do anything other than make silly jokes. So, and the intelligence is not here today. So, well, I'll start with the first question for you, Lee. Then,
for me,
what's your favorite scam?
Can I go to Lauren first? Normally, go to Lauren first.
Go to Lauren first. Yeah. Let's go to you first, then, Lee. What's your favorite scam?
Favorite scam? Okay, there's probably 10 things that I could answer with that. Why don't we go back to pre-tech and pre-tech scams? So scamming's always existed. Like, people have always wanted to get rich quick or be on to the next hot thing. It's not just a technology thing, People have always wanted to get in there first before everybody else and get rich quick, effectively. There's a chap called, and I forget which decade it was, last century, called Greg McGregor. In fact, it was just Gregory McGregor, but Greg McGregor sounds way better.
Gregory McGregor face.
Yeah. And in fact, when you say boaty face, he actually has another name, which is Captain Strangeways. So what he did, and I'll just have to double check the name of the island that he discovered, called Poyatus. So he discovered this wonderful island of Poyatus where the rivers ran of gold. He had a dog called Toto. No, he didn't really. But basically, everything was as you could possibly ever imagine. You could grow anything there, do whatever you want, set up an office in London, and started selling something genius called Poyatus coin. So your Poyatus coin you could exchange for real money, i.e. Great British pounds, and with the promise that when you move over to this promised land, you will amass a huge fortune and it will be worth way more than what it currently is today. I think he took, in today's money, about £20 million worth of English pounds sterling. The great bit about this is Captain Strangeways and all his documentation. Strangeways didn't exist. In fact, Poyatus didn't exist. If you have a look at a map and even where he said roughly where it was, you could see that there's not another country there called Poyatus, never mind one where there's rivers running with gold, etc. So I think that's probably the best scam ever, just because it was the first proper scam of its time, and the fact that he kind of sold fake coins just kind of makes me think, oh look, this is a little bit like something that might be happening in modern society.
So, with this money that he was taking, what exactly did he tell people that they were going to get in return for it?
I don't think they got physical coins. I think they actually got a promise of, this physical coin, or, just call it whatever you want, Poietis dollar, Poietis something, doesn't matter, because he was never going to fall through on it. But the fact is that if you were in there early, this huge promised land filled with rivers of gold, you'd be able to spend your coin. So at least he had an end game, because, with Bitcoin, what can you do with that again?
Buy price.
Bitcoin, man.
Buy promises to maybe own particular pieces of art that aren't owned by anyone. I think that's what it's the sort of cryptocurrencies for at the moment, isn't it?
Or if it becomes greener, you might be able to buy Tesla again. So
yeah.
Although I did notice that Musk tweeted in April saying that he thought that Bitcoin was a great way to encourage greener development or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you analyze tweets, they're a little bit flip-flop. It's funny that. We might come on to that in a bit.
Yeah. I think while we're talking about Bitcoin, it's like a lot of people don't really trust it. What do you think? Do you think is it a scam fundamentally, or is it just something that's being used to do scams?
That is a question which I will answer very, very shortly, and then we might go into a slightly longer answer. Bitcoin is multiple scams, which is why it's so brilliant. And it's hats off, it's admiration to how ridiculously good numerous scams it is. So yeah, if we go back to Gregory McGregor, Captain Strangeways, and his Ponzi coin, he was effectively selling something that was worthless, that didn't really have any value, that he invented. So Bitcoin, created by somebody unknown. I mean, there's lots of discussions as who might have created it. Was it government? Was it a group of individuals? Doesn't really matter. The point is that when it was created, it was worthless. This comes on probably to our first kind of Bitcoin scam, which is pump and dump. I absolutely love that phrase, pump and dump, which is you basically get all of your mates to buy something which is worthless and inflate its price. So you might have seen earlier this year with Game, where lots of people, insiders, very early on, bought longs or shares in Game, and suddenly everybody started coming onto it. But the early investors didn't continue buying, obviously. And as soon as they hit a peak, they all sold. So this is the classic pump and dump. So with Bitcoin, what happens is you'll get a message round on an insiders group, and there are many insiders groups, and there's insiders groups, which basically say, right, okay, we're about to pump now. Buy some now, buy some now, and the price will shoot up. Everybody else will want to catch that rocket to the moon when it's already in space and buy it. And guess what happens? Very, very quickly, sometimes in a matter of minutes, we're not even talking hours or days here, it will drop down to below the level it was before the initial investment. The initial pump. Investment's definitely not the right word. And Bitcoin is the perfect way to do that. There are other ways that Bitcoin itself is a scam, but that's a sort of quick, nice, cheap and dirty pump and dump classic.
It's basic economics, though, isn't it? You increase the demand and the price goes up, and then you increase the supply and the price goes down. And all you need to do is be able to control the demand and potentially the supply. You can do whatever you want with the price, and as long as there is the demand, people will buy it, and you can make huge profits.
So that demand, the reason why that demand exists, there's multiple reasons, but people don't want to miss out that FOMO. It's like, my mates bought it, I didn't. I missed out on, they all trebled their money, or they all got 10 times their money. I'll just put a little bit in just in case. It's that kind of, well, what is the real risk? Enough people do that, suddenly you've got a pump and dump scheme. it's interesting that you said something about the limited supply, because when you look at other coins, let's say Dogecoin. Let's take Dogecoin as an example. One of my pet favorites, little Doge in the window. He's not for sale.
It's great. It's great that there's an entire coin that's named around a meme, and yeah.
So, well, I mean, yeah. What is Musk's actual title with Dogecoin now? I've forgotten. It's something like chief something of Dogecoin. Like the community gave him some grandiose title.
I didn't realize this. I just thought he was somebody. I thought he just thought it was a really funny joke, and, and they made it a thing by being Musk.
So that's there's an actual technical term for that, and this is not me being homophobic. Let me just say that it's called puffing. So Musk is a puffer. What he does is he says something which no reasonable buyer would take seriously. So if you've got a meme coin, obviously he could just turn around and go, "Look, I was having a laugh. Like, surely no one actually bought it," and gets around any legal ramifications for giving financial investment advice because he's puffing. There's a very, very grey line, a small line there between scamming, where the scam begins or ends or starts, I'm not sure, and puffing. So he's created something which is endorsing something occasionally that has limited supply. Hang on, it has unlimited supply? So you said that there's demand and there's, a supply, but if something's got unlimited supply, how can that be manipulated in the same way as something that has limited? It's not quite right, is it? I am shocked that Dogecoin still exists, and I mean, I don't invest in cryptocurrencies anymore. Like, I might have had some Bitcoin back in the day, probably still have a few bits cast around here and there. But someone asked me a couple of years ago, "How much is your Bitcoin worth?" Like, well, it's that amount of Bitcoin. No, but in real money, like the fact that it says, in real money makes it then feel like, well, cryptocurrency isn't a real thing, right?
Well, I mean, how different is it really realistically from real money in quotation marks? Because it used to be that they had things like the gold standard, where real money was backed by physical gold hanging around in a vault somewhere. But those days are long gone. Does anybody have that kind of gold standard anymore? I thought all currencies were basically a promise to give something we don't actually have.
I think you're right. The UK definitely doesn't anymore. Like, it promises to pay the bearer on demand the sum of, but it's not backed by gold reserves anymore.
Yeah. Is it say goods and services on the actual notes or something, to the value of, or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a bit of a scam.
It does sound like a scam, but our entire economy is based on it. Yeah. Do we? While we're on the subject of Bitcoin, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. Okay, let's move off. Moving off the subject of Bitcoins for a little while. What other kind of scams do we have? Do we see in the world nowadays?
Scams I've seen. Well, I mean, scams never actually really change. They're a new medium that support new scams, but scammers have always kind of done the same things. They want to steal your money at the end of the day. So if you think you're being scammed, you should always think to yourself, is somebody just trying to steal my money? Unfortunately, as human beings, we're very we're considerate, and we like to believe people, and we like to be, hope that they have our best interests at heart. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. So there are numerous schemes. You might have heard of the Ponzi scheme, named after Charles Ponzi. This is probably, so there's the Ponzi scheme and the pyramid scheme, often confused. They're not the same thing. The Ponzi scheme is where you borrow from Peter to pay Paul. So you say, "Oh, you know what, Charles Ponzi, I will double your money off, give you 50% of your money," or whatever he said, within 3 months of you giving me your money, guaranteed. Or else, I'll give you everything I own. No guarantees. Like, I promise you, I'll do that. Which is fine, because then he says that to Paul, and Jane and Charles and various other people. So he starts borrowing money to then pay the initial investors, and then says to the initial investors, please tell all your friends that I've doubled your money. Unfortunately, there becomes a point when it's unmanageable, and a lot of investors ask for their money because the 3 months has elapsed at the same time and he doesn't have enough. And suddenly it's a case of, this was a big scam. Nothing I can do about it now. I spent all your money. Sorry. That hasn't happened really in recent times until a chap called Bernie Madoff. And I remember his name because his name's Madoff, and you're made off with money.
It's a good name for a scammer.
Brilliant name. It is Bernie Madoff. Yeah, forget his first name because that's not important. But Mr. Madoff,
Mr. Madoff.
He basically did that and was renowned within the industry as, somebody that you could trust. And he was running a Ponzi schemes guaranteeing like 10% returns. And reality was he just lost everybody's money. I mean, when I say lost, I mean, he was, massively in debt, couldn't pay anybody back. But people trusted him. And the reason why people trust certain people is reputation. So, if you've got those initial investors that have endorsed you, you can kind of get away with that. Well, it worked for them, or he's proven. And also things like religion. So if somebody has the same religious beliefs as you tend to trust them. Ethnicity, various other things. So he kind of played on a bit of that as well, managed to get lots of backers. Reality is he's an absolute crook, and I think he's in jail for 150 years or something. One little sort of side story on that before I finish is there's a chap that wrote a book on gullibility, and you must have heard the joke, look up gullible in the dictionary, it's not there, all the rest of it. There is actually a chap that wrote a book on gullibility. He invested his money with Madoff, which is just priceless. Like I can't believe that he didn't read his own book.
Oh, it's so easy to get conned by these kind of things, though, isn't it? And you, particularly if it's something that you don't fully understand, and we see a lot of. I don't want to say this is an elderly problem, but a lot of people who didn't grow up with technology in their lives. I to some extent include myself in some of that, and I'm very much in the tech industry, but I still don't understand what TikTok's about. But you don't understand, but you don't want to be that person who is seen to not understand you, and it's very easily to be conned by somebody because of your own ability to just go to want to hide that you're not quite as technically knowledgeable as you think you are. You're embarrassed to be caught out, and I think that also extends to afterwards as well. People who were scammed often don't talk about being scammed, and then they're not, because they're embarrassed about it, which isn't, it's a natural feeling when someone's conned you. Problem with that is if you don't talk about it, then it's just as easy for your friend to be scammed with the same scam.
I think they feel like it's their fault. So they've been scammed. They feel embarrassed and they don't want to tell anyone about it because they were trying to get ahead of the curve, prove that they understood Bitcoin, they understood, modern technologies. Then it's even worse when that thing doesn't pan out because that's a double whammy for them. And like you say, they don't report it. It doesn't get followed up. And a lot of these sort of minor crimes, they just don't get reported. We've no idea how many people have actually been scammed on various different schemes. But also, I don't think the police actually have the time to follow all these things up. In the old days, we're talking about Gregory McGregor. He was one guy who invested heavily in scamming people. So he took out offices in London. He had expenses. He really went to town. Whereas today, with social media and social engineering and maybe human hacking, that maybe we can call it, the cost to entry for sort of petty scammers is virtually nothing. So you get lots more people doing very, very minor scams, which is it worth the police following up on all those things? How do you police that? It's a really tricky problem.
It's a lot easier nowadays to automate scams and scam people en masse. If you can attempt to scam 1 million people and 1,000 of those fall for it, you're still going to be making a fair bit of money, aren't you? Even though only 1% of the people who you attempted actually were successful on. So you can make huge profits just by throwing really bad scams at people. I mean, the classic one is the sort of the Nigerian 401. Is it 401? Have I got the right number there? I think I have, haven't I?
401k?
Yes. No, the 401 is based off the Nigerian legal code, I believe, where the number comes from.
Yeah. It was a few years ago when that was in the headlines.
Yeah, but that's a classic one. I'm some Nigerian prince who has millions of pounds that I need to get into the UK. If you help me with it, I will give you a percentage, but I'll need some money up front just to see that you're just to pay for the transaction costs and to make sure that you're trustworthy. And then off they go with the money. And the actual quality of the emails and the messages that people got from those things was appalling. It's like there was no real attempt to make them even look real. And that was also part of it, because they wanted to filter out people who were not going to fall from it early, because it saves their effort. So they people who don't spot that this email doesn't look real, just looks suspicious immediately, they are more likely to be successfully conned. But that again goes to people not having the knowledge. If you don't know what a professional looking email, you don't spot the obvious signs of somebody being untruthful, someone being truthful, it's really easy for you to fall for these things.
I think they step up the authenticity as well. So the initial email is intentionally really bad, just to draw the likely candidates in. And then actually they might have a website that does look a little bit more like the genuine article, just because then no one questions it. It's like the old, fraud salesman technique, whereby you would you'd say, but I mean, this is 100% proven. This isn't a scam. So the reason why this isn't a scam, and by telling people it's not a scam over and over, or you don't want to listen to this other company because what they do.
And I think the big one of those at the moment is thank you, Lucy, for mentioning it in the comments. But phishing scams is obviously the on the increase, and they've now gone the other way, because they tend to be trying to scam usually people who are actually quite knowledgeable, but convincing them that it's a true message. And this mainly works because it's so easy for you to accidentally leak personal information in ways that we didn't think was possible before. So logging into a site and accidentally thinking, oh, this looks like my banking site. Getting an email that you think is from your bank, and you're clicking on the login button, and it looks just like your banking site, and you start entering your credentials, and then there you go, they've got your credentials. And they even have advanced versions of that now, where they actually will get your credentials and then forward you on to the real site. So you've no idea you've been scammed. A lot of the technology vendors, particularly Google and Apple, have been very good at now I've said the words very good, I want to make sure that's true. They've put some effort into trying to make it hard for these scams to be successful. And they've done a number of various things to try and make it hard. The padlock indicator on your browser is usually a really good indicator. You should make sure it's green.
Mine's grey, Andy.
Yeah, mine's grey as well. Green means it's extended validation, I believe, which is means that not only is it claiming to, it's getting from who it claims to be, that somebody's actually gone and validated that person, that site is the company that it's supposed to be as well, has a real address and things like that.
Remind me to tell my nan that as well. It's extended validation. That's what it is.
Exactly. I know I work in this industry, and I struggle to remember what all this stuff does and exactly which bits. And all you need to do is send you one of these messages at moment when you're a bit under stress or a bit distracted, and you go, "Oh God, my bank! Oh crap!" Type in the information. Whoops! There we go.
It's a misconception, right, that it's stupid people that get scammed. It's absolutely not. Anybody is susceptible to it, and it does happen. You just need to double think about what you're doing, and report as well. I think HMRC got, was it over 1 million reports of phishing emails in the last 12 months, which is actually good in one respect because people are spotting it and reporting it. The bad news is how many of those people from those various attempts actually thought they were getting a tax rebate.
Yeah, and I think could you highlight Lucy's message? My favourite scams are the ones that's a really interesting one that we've become more aware of now, which is where companies are testing their employees to see if they are good enough at spotting phishing attempts.
Do you remember the GoDaddy one? Did you see that one?
Was it GoDaddy? I'm trying to remember the name of the company that did one.
Yeah, so GoDaddy, what they did was they sent out all the employees and said, "You're getting a Christmas bonus or a bonus or something. Just fill in all your details here." Obviously, there was no bonus, and I think the few hundred, maybe 1,000 people that filled it in went on security awareness training course as their bonus. So yeah, I like that. I mean, I know that divides opinion, but the best way to learn is to be aware, fall for it, feel like you've got away with it, and make sure it never happens again. Like that. Is a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to do it, because it just sticks in your brain. Then, it's those things that have made me aware of when I've actually done something stupid and I realized later I'd done something stupid. I had one recently where I had a text message asking me to get a smart meter installed, and there's a whole subtext about whether smart meters are a scam, but that's for a different talk, I think. But I got a message saying I was being updated to a smart meter, and please call this number to call up. And because I was expecting it, I just rang the number back. And then halfway through the conversation, where I'd basically given them my email address and some security information, I suddenly realized, hang on, I've not validated at all that this is the person that they claim to have been. Anybody could have sent me that text message with that phone number in. And I was a little embarrassed of myself, like, what have I done here? But it's just so easy to do, because I was expecting the message. I just pressed the button, didn't even think about it.
Exactly. I wouldn't say I was almost scammed, because I wasn't, but I had a scam attempt. Let's call it a scam attempt. When I was waiting for my COVID jab for the first one. So I'm stood in line and my phone starts ringing, and thinking this is going to be at least 20 minutes. I'll just take a quick call, even if it's a work call, it'll be fine. So this voice of God says, "Your national insurance number is about to be terminated." I'm thinking, well, the only way that happens is if I'm dead. So what's about to happen? Obviously, a scam, but it's not even logical. People don't. I mean, your national insurance number, it lives with you until you die. The fact that people are falling for that telephone scam, automated telephone scam, is remarkable. The fact it's not even been shut down baffles me, because I've now had it 3 or 4 times. I've blocked 3 or 4 different numbers. I've reported 3 or 4 different numbers. You could even look at the audio on that call and see that it's the same pre-recorded message, and either trace the source or just block it, or terminate the call as soon as you suspect it's that one. But nothing's happening to prevent it. So I know we put a lot of onus on the individuals to make sure that they're not being scammed, but there is a lot more that can be done to prevent the scams in the first place. I mean, I'm not talking just about a spam folder that Gmail or Hotmail put in. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is proper proactive and chasing down known scams that have been running for a long period of time. There's no excuse for that. But who should police that?
Policing is hard, though, isn't it? On that, who's if it's especially over the internet, anything you do over the internet is difficult to know. At least like who is responsible for policing it is difficult. Reading an interesting thing about GDPR the other week, where it turns out GDPR is not just it's actually not EU citizens that are covered under GDPR. It's anybody who's physically in the EU at the point that they are contacted, that the information is captured, which is fascinating. Because
what if you got a VPN or a proxy?
Doesn't matter. If you're physically in the EU, you are covered, no matter how you access it. Which is obviously quite difficult, because how do you know they're physically in the EU?
Well, that's what I was currently. I was thinking. How do people like the National Lottery do it? Because it's illegal to buy a ticket outside of the UK.
Yeah, they must have some way, and they're doing it. But I suspect they also have a lot of people who have a VPN, and they have no way of validating whether someone's bought a ticket or not.
Go around to the house and check they're still there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good point, though. So in the old days, scammers, they would be in the local area. They'd go door to door and say, right, these products that I've got in this briefcase, I'm going to give to you for virtually nothing. You can sell them. You can make 100 times your money back. Obviously, the scammer's got a bit of an outlay there. They've got to go door to door. They might have a hit rate of, I don't know, 1 in 100. It's hard graft. Whereas what we're talking about here is very different. You're spamming millions of people. You only need 4 or 5 of those millions even to return a profit. Profit's the right word.
Yeah, that's true. I think, as we said before, you don't need the automation allows you to fire out so many of these now in such a short period of time. As you say, low barrier to entry, that you're almost guaranteed to get a few. Some of the more interesting phishing scams that I've find quite fascinating recently are the what they call puny code attacks. Now, puny code is a way of allowing you to put foreign characters into a URL. Anything that is used, a system called Unicode, if anyone non-technical is listening, but which allows you to support, in theory, every language that exists in the world. In practice, I don't think that's actually true. But and the problem with this is that some of these foreign characters look remarkably similar to Latin alphabet characters. And the most famous one with these was there's a URL that someone managed to register, which if you looked at the puny code was something like xn-236992 or something ridiculous like that. But actually, when you saw it in your browser, it said apple.com. So suddenly, anybody who was going on this site was like, "Oh, it's apple.com. That's fine. Must be completely safe to give them my credit card details." Of course, it wasn't, because it was not apple.com at all. But you couldn't tell the difference unless you really, really knew what you were looking for. I know Chrome and Firefox and I think Edge have now put in protections that will warn you if the URL looks like using characters that look like Latin alphabet characters, but aren't, which is great. But there was quite a while where this people on older browsers can still be affected by this. There was quite a while where it looks, for all intents and purposes, like you're on some foreign site, some well-known site, but you're just not at all. Another interesting fact I read about these things recently was that a lot of these URLs, these fake URLs that they use to scam people to make them think they're on sites that they're not, they have an average lifespan of 4 hours. So people are putting them up, scamming some people, and then tearing them down and moving on with no trace that they were ever there.
Is that just because they know they're going to get reported, and then they might as well cycle it through, and they've built that into their scam?
Because as soon as they're reported, they end up on some blocked address list, and then that site is invisible to huge parts of the internet all of a sudden. So but the fact that they can turn these whole thing around and make a profit in 4 hours is impressive. It's really impressive.
Yeah, not that we're idolizing them or anything, but
No, but I'm also thinking I could really do with recruiting some of their developers.
Well, this is it. Like, if smart people have thought about this, and they want to do that and keep sites up and alive, surely there is an ethical way that they could make at least the same amount of money in a very sensible, constructive way. You'd like to hope so. If there isn't, then there should be. Whether it's actually doing security, so people that are inventing these new kinds of scams. I mean, that's quite an old one, and browsers have got that covered now. But there are new scams that are popping up every day. If you think that you have a scam, why not see whether a company is interested in your new innovative scam and say, look, I'd like to be a security consultant for you, or I'd like to do some ethical hacking of your site. So there's sites that allow you to ethically go in and try and exploit websites. Why not spend your time doing that? Make the world a better place than try and rip off someone's nan. Like, it's not a nice place to be. And unfortunately, there are people that exist like that, and good-natured people, humans like to trust people. They will fall for that, and they're not going away at all. One of my favorite ones, I don't want to bring it back to cryptocurrency, but I am, just because I love a bit of crypto.
It's because Lauren isn't here, isn't it? Because she doesn't like us talking about anything crypto related.
Blockchain, anything blockchain. It's like, it's nonsense. You're not getting a Lambo. Well, because you're not here, Lauren, and I hope that you are watching this and laughing at us, I'm going to talk about another kind of crypto coin. Do you remember OneCoin, Andy? It must have been about 5 years ago.
I think I missed that one.
I forget what her name is, but she basically has a huge marketing budget and stood on stage and was just like, we are the Bitcoin killer. We are going to displace the world. And she did the classic sales thing of, oh, but there's a time thing. There's a call to action here, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a OneCoin 2, and if you buy now, we'll double your coin. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, so this Ethereum 2 stuff. It does feel like, and this might be an unpopular view, so I'll keep it brief. So Coinbase, for example, they allow you to stake in the US only at the moment your Ethereum, while the Ethereum 2 upgrade or forking, whatever you want to call it, is going on. That feels like exactly that's a kind of, oh, well, if you do it now, we'll give you all these benefits, and oh, and yeah, this new thing's coming along, you'll get that too. So tick, 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 tick. It does feel like a scam, right?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, it has a lot of the indicators of a scam.
The bit that frustrates
too good
me
to be true.
That's the phrase. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there are some coins that exist today in cryptocurrency that do have merit. So I don't want to mention some or endorse any, but if you look at something like Solana, which is very well kept Rust code base, you'd like that, Andy. It has marketplaces and potential built on top of it. You can see genuine utility. I think that cryptocurrencies that have genuine utility and application, have merit. Whether you want to be trading futures and things on them, not quite so sure. Not sure that's how it should be. Unfortunately, Bitcoin, everything kind of is backed by Bitcoin. So if you look at the big exchanges like BitMEX or Binance or any of those, they will have an underlying currency, which is probably their currency. So BitMEX have XBT, which is effectively Bitcoin. Everything's tied to Bitcoin. So we're in this kind of deadlock now where things that aren't a scam, that have genuine utility, are kind of locked into some of the legacy systems and legacy scams. We kind of need everything to reset and rethink just to go, right, okay, enough playing around now. How do we actually progress as a race? How do we actually do something that's worthwhile with, like I say, utility? everybody shouldn't be creating a coin. That is just not what this is supposed to be. Every man and his dog could have a coin in 5 years' time, and that would be a terrible, terrible place. George the plumber needed a website in 2001. George the plumber needed an app for his plumbing business in 2008. Now George the plumber needs a coin. He needs to take his own. No, it's not how it should be.
No.
We should take some questions. We should encourage some questions, actually.
Definitely. I was just about to ask, yes, if you have any questions about scams, please put them in the comments and we will address them. While people are asking questions, though, one of the things I really want to talk about is some of the more modern social engineering hacks that are very popular at the moment. One of my particular favorites, and in the last month or so, this seems to have become like a really big deal that suddenly everybody's making a noise about. But this, your porn name is your email address and your password, and those kind of Facebook sort of games that look like a lot of fun, and obviously none of them ask for directly for your email address and your password. They usually ask for things like your mother's maiden name and your first pet's name. It's like these are exactly the questions that people use for security questions. So when you can't prove that with your bank that it's actually you, they will ask you these sort of questions. They will ask you often these predefined questions, and most of them, I've always been a bit nervous around these security questions as it is, because quite a lot of them feel like anybody with a bit of time and effort could probably discover quite a few of them anyway, particularly my mother's maiden name. It's like, I'm pretty sure there's a record of that, public record of that.
What is it, Andy? Remind me. It was something like
Jeff.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff. So, yeah, there's a lot of these around, and the other one I have a real hatred of at the moment is things like the ones that are a little bit more subtle. Like, what was the number one the day you were born? It's like, okay, that probably narrows down your date of birth to 7 days.
You know what? I almost fell for that, actually. So this is it, right? Like, someone said it to me, but in a very, very clever context as well. And well, in fact, I told you before, Andy. So
you
there
did.
we go. That's how easy it is to be tripped up.
It's a good job I forgot, isn't it? Otherwise, I'd be ringing your bank this afternoon.
I almost reminded you that. Well played, sir.
But yeah, and then the other one, I really like is or hate, is the one where it's like where they're trying to get what your predictive text is. I've not quite worked out how these are scammed yet, but I'm pretty sure you're leaking so much personal information when it says enter these 2 words and then let the predictive text fill in the next sentence. It's like all of those predictive texts are based on information they're based on what you enter. This is the sort of things that you would normally say. Therefore, these are the things that we think you're going to say now. So it's leaking personal information about you on those. Pretty sure somebody with enough technical skill can work out a hack around those things to get some personal information. And as we've said before, you have 1 million people fill these things in. You only need a couple of those people to accidentally leak some really private and security information, and it's worth the effort.
We've got a really good question. Sorry to interrupt you, Andy, but while we've got
go ahead.
I want to jump into a good question. Online scams are not necessarily restricted to getting cash, but also modifying behavior. So actually, you're right. I always think about a scam as who is trying to extract money from me. And that's always kind of the long-term goal, money or power. And we've done a few podcasts before. So if you go to feelingtechish.com, listen to some of our older podcasts. We did like election fraud, all different kinds of modifying behavior. So yes, it's not always about directly trying to extract cash from that person. I guess when you look at some social engineering, sometimes you want people to believe that other people have bought a product or bought a service. Modifying behavior itself and fake news is probably a whole podcast itself. Andy, we've done like 2 or 3 on this, haven't we? So maybe we'll tweet out the link afterwards. But yeah, the way I see scams is someone trying to take money from me. It's something too good to be true, and it's kind of directed towards that particular thing. Manipulation of thoughts is obviously another concern, and much easier in today's technological world. But yeah, it's kind of those old-fashioned scams that existed that have now been ported to technology that are probably the main concern.
I think we have a bit of a almost jokey idea of what a scam is. I think in a lot of people's mind, a scam is often benign, or at least it's, oh no, look at you got scammed out of 100 quid kind of level of how you think about it. The problem with them is that they often lead to bigger scams, particularly the social engineering ones. And when you're changing behaviors and changing other things, one of the more common ones that anybody who is involved in an e-commerce website is related to is our old friend Mr. Credential Stuffing Attack, where someone will download the leaked credentials, email and password, usually of from some site, and then try them against a different site to see if someone's shared the same credentials across it. So it's really easy to accidentally give away the credentials of some very, very inane site that you feel is not that important at all, and feel you don't need to make it secure whatsoever, only to find that you've used the same credentials on somebody else, on another account, which is actually your bank, your credit card company, or even just like Amazon, somebody who has your credit card details, and then that's it.
There are simple rules to follow, right? Don't reuse passwords. So you'd hope that some of the larger organizations do have multi-factor authentication, other security checks to prevent them from that sort of password reuse. But if you're reusing a password, you're only as secure as the weakest website that you've put that password into. And that might have been 10 years ago. And sticking a 1 on the end of it or sticking an exclamation mark on the end of it, that doesn't work. I'm sorry to tell you. It needs to be completely unique passwords. Or just don't use passwords, use passphrases. And unfortunately, there are very different ways that you can store them, because you're never going to remember a million passphrases, but you are going to remember some pet passphrases, and you can cycle those much easier. And please don't stick a 1 or an exclamation mark on the end of stuff.
Or even one that I know a few people have done, and it makes me a bit angry, is stick the name of the website on the end of their password, so that they know what the password will be, because it will be their usual password plus Amazon.
I'm not going to tell you who said this to me, and it wasn't recently, but someone said, when I need to make up a password, do you remember when they used to have like the session tokens and stuff in the query string? You just paste that in because it's a random. What? You did what on every website?
Yes, feeling techish password 1. Yeah, that's the one. How did they?
Well, no, we replaced the E's with 3s now. We did that. Yeah.
What I want to know is how did you know what our YouTube password was?
I'm actually now concerned it might be that. It's not.
Yeah, it's surprisingly easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm only joking. It's password 2. Yeah, it is now anyway.
Yeah, with zeros instead of the O's, of course. Yeah.
I mean, multi-factor authentication is the way around a lot of these things. So if you have the option to set it up, just set it up. And another thing which is related to multi-factor authentication is, where do you keep your backup access codes? So I have a file printed out with backup access codes that, if heaven forbid, when I was stood in that queue waiting for my jab and the voice of God tells me I'm about to be terminated, it does happen, then my wife or somebody can access that particular folder, has the access codes for everything as backups. So they don't need to even know my passwords, but they know where the file is. Make sure that you don't lose those backup access codes. I know a lot of people for example, on GitHub that have not downloaded their access codes at the time when they're told to. They've dropped the phone, lost the phone, smashed the phone, whatever, and suddenly can't access the GitHub, and they've got a new GitHub account.
Yeah. So, there's a great question from Simon Farrow, hierarchical scams. Yeah, that's that is one that's very common now. That unfortunately we so much use our phones and our email addresses and various other things as like the hub of all of our security. That those things need to be protected like they are the crown jewels. If somebody gets access to those, it's so easy to just go and do a password reset request on every site that you think might you might have an account registered, and then off you go.
I hate the fact that things are tied to email as well. I hate the fact that passwords exist is kind of number one. Yeah. Like there are better solutions to this these days. And number two, the fact that everything's tied to my email account. Like I kind of don't want that. I don't want to log in socially with Facebook either because I'm trying to delete that account. There must be a better way of me doing that. And it probably is, some kind of Apple login which masks email addresses and on the device or device specific to what you're logging in with. There are companies that have done really smart things with verifying on mobile apps, particularly whether it's you or not, like the angle that you're holding the phone, how fast you're swiping, all kinds of stuff, as well as tangential, as well as quantitative things like your IP address, your location, time of day, all that kind of stuff. You bundle it all together, and then you say, actually, do we need to do a two-factor auth on this device that we now trusted, and all of these things kind of match up with this confidence score. As much as we like to, say you need to prevent yourself from being scammed, there's a lot more that companies can do. Reality is, the small websites or small apps, they're the ones that are actually causing all the problems. They get an exploit, they're reported to the ICO within 72 hours, but passwords are out there. If you reuse that password, you're just kind of asking for trouble.
Yeah. I must admit, I also I always try to sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of offset my email address, so I don't use a Hotmail or a Gmail or a Yahoo email address. I use my own domain. That so it makes it's that one step harder for people to get to my email address. They don't know what email provider I'm actually using under the hood.
You know what's good about that as well is so I signed up for, I think it was when Adobe had the hack. I used Adobe at my own domain. So that's actually a way of knowing who's being exploited, because you can then see that fake user.
And also almost all of the common email providers allow you to do the plus trick. So you have your email address, your normal first part of your email plus some word at, and then Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo. And that's extremely useful, because at least then you sort of adding that little bit of extra security, which account has been lost. Also, tiny bit more difficult for people to actually get your right account address on that.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. The fact that if someone's downloaded your passwords and you have reused it, then actually the email's not the same.
Yeah,
and it might be guessable, but yeah, you've got that extra layer. We've had a good question, another one from Simon saying, have either of you tried the YubiKey or any alternatives? I have. I used it with GitHub. I couldn't tell you where it is, but I did have one. In fact, I bought a couple of friends them, and I don't think they use them either. So yes, I've tried them, and they're a great idea, but I just don't think that they just don't have the traction, not even with the dev community, which generally means that they're not going to get any traction.
I know a few developers who do use them and actually really like them. I've not been totally convinced about them, and I think they're probably become redundant with WebAuthn and a few other protocols that are starting to become a little bit more popular at the moment, which allow you to use things like fingerprints to access websites and those kind of things. The one really fascinating thing I found about YubiKey at the moment is I know Cloudflare are trying to replace captures with what they call hardware attestation, which is basically you have a bit of hardware, a YubiKey usually, a little thing that you plug into your USB slot, which is supposed to at least provide a level of protection that there is a human at least on the other end when you're accessing a site. You'll come as no surprise that got hacked and destroyed within a few hours or a few days, I think it technically was.
Nice challenge, right? I mean, if
yeah.
this is the problem. You put stuff like that out there, people see it as a challenge to break it.
The using it as a proof that you are human is a very interesting thing. But somebody managed to automate it very quickly. Yeah, nodding bird. People listening to audio won't get that reference, but the nodding bird is pretty much exactly what they did. They just replaced the nodding bird with a Arduino.
See, I like that, and you know that's what I mean. Like, you give developers a challenge, sometimes they will try and circumvent it. I mean, to be honest, if someone can figure out a way for me to easily tell Google where the bridge is and the bicycles end and where the traffic lights are, I would really appreciate that, because I can't work it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was exactly why Cloudflare were looking at this. And to be fair to the people, it was an ethical hacker who worked out how to get around this. They even said this is still harder than a lot of the solutions they have for those. Which ones are these? Type in these letters that you can't read, because apparently I've not been a human for quite some while, because I've failed almost every one of those for years. But they're getting even more clever now. Like, I had one the other day that was which one of these mazes is completable by the mouse. So we got like 8 different mini mazes and a mouse and an endpoint, and you had to say which one of those 8 mazes was actually solvable.
And then you forgot what website you're on and what you went on to do.
yeah, it was. I mean, if I had a few beers, I would have not gone into the website.
I mean, we're moving on to a bit of a tangent, but I do want to answer this question next. So a friend of mine actually had a challenge on his alarm code on his Android device, which was a really difficult challenge that made him think and get up out of bed. So he couldn't, he's either got to smash his phone to stop it, or he's got to do something that's really hard. It's almost like the 8 mouses, but I think it might have been a little bit more mathematical than that.
Yeah.
So the next question is by unfortunate username Chump72. That's just because you're old, not because you call a chump. The worst practice by far is when you have websites that won't accept. This is my pet hate. When it says it's too long, it's like, why is it too long? Or you don't conform to this random thing that we've decided. Why? Like, what are you trying to solve by restricting the input? And sometimes it'll say your password is too long. That this is the one that really grinds me. Didn't you see that recently, Andy? Actually, about passwords being too long and plain text passwords.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many issues I have with passwords. I've seen a couple of places recently with maximum length of passwords that's not that long, like 16 characters. Like, no, just move to a different website if you can. When it's that kind of low, that's just an alarm bell that tells you that something is not secure. One of the other ones I'm not so keen on is the enter your 3rd, 6th, and 8th letters of your password. There is a lot of really bad password systems out there at the moment. Yeah, if it won't accept certain characters, that drives me insane as well. I'm completely with you on that one.
So there was a broadband provider who I won't name, who I might have named in a previous podcast by accident, who said to me, "What is the 4th digit of your password?" I went, "What, you can see my password?" He went, "No, I input it and it tells me whether it's right," which is still bad because it's plain text somewhere. And I said,
"Semicolon." It's also really easy to hack your password there. There's an automation system there that would hack someone's password.
I also said semicolon, and he went, "Which one's that one?"
Yeah.
And we spent 5 minutes trying to do it, and he went, "Can you phone me back after you've changed your password?"
Try doing. I haven't. An old colleague of mine claimed that this actually happened to him, but he was British and he had a hash symbol in his password in America, and he then had to explain what the hash symbol was because it's called the pound sign in America. Yeah, that one was a whole lot of fun.
Pound tag.
Yeah, pound tag. I did notice recently that the security organization whose name has slipped my mind very recently updated their sort of suggestions on the best advice on recommendations. That's the word I was looking for on security, and actually said password complexity checks don't work. Just do length. Just have a minimum length. That's it. Which I thought was fascinating. They said they found no evidence that all of this, you've got to enter one alphanumeric, one uppercase, one lowercase, 3 letters, 3 numbers, 6 minus signs, and all that kind of nonsense. Just don't work. Just put a minimum length in there, and make it 10 instead of 6, or something like that.
I mean, I've seen it myself. People will literally. Might have seen some people typing some passwords. When people are, doing a minimum length password, what they will do is they'll come up with a pet phrase that they use all the time. They'll put a 1 on it, an exclamation mark, and then an ampersand or something on the end of it, just to satisfy the requirements, which is not as good as a passphrase. Passphrases, they're much longer, and if you do, random uppercase characters or within it, it's much stronger, harder to brute force, and keep them unique. I feel like we've strayed into super technical stuff here.
We have a little bit, yeah.
Lauren was here. Lauren would be bringing us back to reality.
She would. I have one thing. I don't want to embarrass anybody in the comments, but one of my other little pet hates is people who have the year of their birth in their username. That's a yeah. Thank you. That's you're leaking some security information there. Just FYI.
I like this. I mean, sorry, it's not your date of birth. That's fine. That's fine.
That's good. That's good. That's fine. Yeah. It's. I've seen so many sort of usernames that are Jeff 1982 or something like that. And it's like, oh, is that the year you were born? Then was it? Okay, well, that's one security question I've got the answer to.
I mean, chump springs to mind.
So for a few random words that come into your head, there's no reason, just asking for.
So, yeah, I actually like this. It's not their date of birth.
Good,
I mean,
thank you.
That's genius. I mean, so if you want to throw someone off track, come up with an email address that's like 1980 something that isn't your day of birth. Genius.
Well, I mean, I don't think I've ever given a valid answer to a lot of the security, a correct answer to a lot of the security questions I'm asked. Whenever I'm asked, what's your first pet's name? I've never had a pet, but I always have a first pet's name to give them, and it's not always the same one, which is sometimes problematic because I forget.
I'm pleased I'm not the only person, Andy. Who's your favourite Formula One team, by the way? Just
Braun.
So Mercedes.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? I don't see any more obvious questions. Lee, do you have any comments you want to wrap up with before we finish, or just giving people a few minutes to?
Yeah, if anyone wants to write a question, do it now. I think that what I'd like to say is scams have always existed. They've actually not changed fundamentally. They're always about extracting money or manipulating in some way. As someone made the comment in the comments, it's the same process. It's now done on a much wider scale. It's not limited to people in your local village or people within your network, which makes it easier for scammers to access people, but also harder for you in a distributed world to be able to authenticate the person on the other end. So, that prince from Nigeria, it's hard for you the first time you see that scam to kind of disprove that they aren't that person. Whereas, if someone knocked on your door and said, I'm a Nigerian prince, it's a little bit easier to maybe spot when it's a balding white guy that's got. So it makes it easier for scammers to scam people. and they're getting more sophisticated. Companies need to do more to prevent those sophisticated attacks. But the only way they'll manage to do that is if we, as a world, as a group, report as much as possible. Yes, not everything gets followed up, and police will just shrug off a lot of things. You might be embarrassed if you've been scammed. If I've been scammed, I would report it, and yes, I would be embarrassed. Might not to mention it on the podcast, but there's a responsibility there to at least not just tell your family, but tell the authorities.
Yeah, I think I would probably echo almost all of that. In fact, all of that. And I really like the phrase "knowledge is power" as well. I think that's really important here. If anything, feels a bit off, if anything you don't understand, just go and research it before you say yes to something. Before you give away anything that any information that they might use against you later. If someone calls you and says someone texts you and says call this number, Google the phone number. There are plenty of websites that'll tell you whether it's a scam or not. If you get an email address, if you get an email from your boss saying please send me the important business information right now, I'm stuck in a meeting, make sure don't just hit reply, maybe email them directly. Without don't make any assumptions that it came from it, but also maybe just message them over the phone or Slack or whatever and say, did you send me this? That there are lots of ways of just validating and verifying that someone is not trying to scam you, and it's so easy for people to pretend to be things they're not right now.
If in doubt, the right thing to do is question it.
Yeah.
No one will take the mick out of you for questioning something. If you think something's suspicious, deleting it straight away is way better than accidentally clicking on something that then, exploits the company that you work for or something like that. So I guess the sound advice is companies like HMRC, which isn't really a company, that are used to having these attacks on them all the time. If you phone them up and say, I've just had this, they're geared up to respond to that. You're not the only person. There's a million other people that have responded to those and called HMRC and said, is this a genuine thing? Like, just phone them up. Use the phone number on their genuine website. Don't press links. Don't click links. Don't call back. Just phone the company and say, did you just call me? Simple as that.
Cool. We have one question from Chump72. Not sure if you talked about it. Yes, we did. We did talk about the Prince scam deliberately. We didn't say spelling mistakes, but yes, they were deliberately. We talked about that earlier in the podcast. Feel free to listen to it on feelingtechish.com.
From the start.
From the start. I've been following you. I'm getting quite good at this segueing into an actual advert.
Yeah, so should we do that? So please follow us on Twitter, which is, what's the handle? Feeling_techish.
Do you know, I really should have that written down because I always forget what it is. Great. I don't think we have any more questions, so let's say thank you for everybody to listening and for the really good questions. We've had a lot of interaction today, which is great, particularly as we've been missing the person with all the really good knowledge and the really good stories. So you've got the idiot show, basically us two, this week. So yeah, thank you again. We need to say this is our opinions, not at all related to any company we may be in any way associated with.
It might be a scam. Who knows?
It might be a scam. Yeah. Subscribe, follow, do all those things. Next time, we don't know. We haven't arranged it yet, unfortunately. But we are planning to do one in the next few weeks. So just follow us on Twitter and we'll let you know when.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren.